And now for the questions. Again, as I mentioned, we have a lot of great questions. And we're going to try to get as many in as possible. The first one you'll see in a second is from Tulio Borges from the Euro School of Brasilia. And it's appropriate to our particularly serious moment in the economy.
Dr. Raymond, I wish to pose a question for both candidates. Are we witnessing the disintegration of American capitalism? For in the words of Nobel Prize winner Joseph Stiglitz, if the American intervention isn't socialism, what is?
Is the welfare state socialism?
Maybe we'll have to get into that.
Thank you.
Crockett, the question will go to you.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for that question. And it's a relevant question, especially because a lot of people in Latin America are asking it. But the answer is no, it isn't. There have been so many times where we have gone through crises over the last 200 to 300 years where people have predicted the end of capitalism or the end of the world or the end of democracy or the end of this or the end of that. It's a fairly opportunistic way to deal with your emotions at a moment like this. But what's actually happening is very serious. It could lead us to either a very deep recession or a deep depression. However, underneath it all, the ability for the world economy to rebound is still there. It's still quite there. In fact, there's discussion today in most of the media that the drops in the share values on the stock markets of the world are incredibly low, and people who are positioning themselves well in the next couple of weeks are going to stand to make a huge fortune in buying up extremely undervalued stocks when they rebound within the next few years. So all the prognostications of doom about the greatest system that has reduced poverty and created more wealth for more people across the world in human history, it's certainly not dead yet.
Steve, you have 90 seconds.
I would have to agree that it's certainly not the end of capitalism. The question is, what kind of capitalism? The parallels of exactly what's happening right now are amazingly stunning to what happened in 1929, 1930, 1931. And when Franklin Roosevelt became president of the United States, many people historically have referred to Franklin Roosevelt as the savior of modern capitalism. Why? Because he put into place many of the protections, many of the oversight procedures, many of the regulations that actually revived capitalism, that actually brought the country out of the Great Depression. We're looking at, in my opinion, a meltdown of conservative policies, of deregulatory policies, and of this freewheeling capitalism that says anything goes. You don't need all this burdensome regulation and oversight. Well, there's a difference between that which is burdensome oversight and that which is sensible oversight. There's a difference between sensible regulation and burdensome regulation. Those policies, those regulations that were put into place during the Roosevelt administration stood the United States well for well over 60 years. During this last generation, as they started to be whittled away and whittled away and whittled away to the point where they were almost completely done away with, now we're witnessing what comes of that. Now we're witnessing what comes when you allow this kind of regime to have this kind of freewheeling say over the marketplace. It's time for a change.
Thank you. And now let's try the second video, if we can have that again, and I'll repeat the question if it can't be understood. This is from, and I apologize beforehand if I've massacred the name here, Lupita Argiani-Grum from the Escola das Nações in Brasilia. She's in the 12th grade.
Mr. Raymond, I have a question for the two candidates. How will each of you adapt your economic program in view of the recent passage of the $700 billion rescue plan?
Steve, was that clear to you?
Yes, it was.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
It's an excellent question about what we would do in the United States. I'm not Senator Obama, and I don't work for the campaign, but I'm certainly a Democratic supporter. It is an excellent question about what we would do to restore our standing in the world and restore our reputation with our allies around the world. There was a program that some of you may have seen recently on CNN. Christiane Amanpour had the the 5 secretaries of state, Henry Kissinger, Madeleine Albright, Warren Christopher, Jim Baker, and Colin Powell together. And what was fascinating and stunning about what they had to say, they both came from Democratic and Republican administrations alike. All of them basically agreed on 5 principles. They said, first, close Guantanamo Bay. Second, ban torture. Third, lead on climate change. Take a standing in the world and lead on that. Not just in rhetoric, not just in saying we have a problem and we intend to do something about it, but take a leadership role in developing new technologies that will actually help clean up the problem of carbon emissions and turn back what's happening to our global climate. Fourth, they said, cooperate and compromise with the allies. You cannot continue to take this go-it-alone strategy and expect that just because you are a global leader, a superpower, that everyone has to follow you. You need to cooperate. You need to work with the other nations of the world that you call your allies. And finally, engage your adversaries. Sit down with them and discuss your problems. You're not going to get anywhere by dictating to your adversaries what you expect from them and expect them to just roll over. You need to engage in positive, progressive talks. In fact, the Bush administration itself has just begun to do this within the last year or so with North Korea. So it seems to me odd why they wouldn't want to do it with other adversaries.